this is what are we actually doing and what do we care about? And also there was a little thing of, oh, people who are in it for the money are just gonna like run us off a cliff. But let's find out businesses that are in it for the money and what they're doing, okay? And see if we're headed for the cliff or not. And I think that's an interesting way to sort of introduce some of this. So from Volvo, we have Lars Sundqvist. Yep. From Tata Consulting Company, we have Erik Vind, and we have the CTO of MIT. That's not her actual title, but that's probably what it is. Daniela Roos, who's been everywhere today.
I like that.
You like that? Okay, we'll give you that. I'll make you a little nameplate, right? So why don't we start with Lars? So you're, from what I've seen you've been doing, you're really developing a formula for where to use AI in a sort of a practical way. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
To start with then, the Volvo Group then is trucks, buses and construction equipment. So it's everything with the Volvo onto it, but not passenger cars then. And I'm running the engineering society in the company, 15,000 engineers across the globe. And to be clear, AI is of course not something that popped up yesterday, or it didn't pop up with generative AI either. So for years we have been using machine learning, deep learning, in order to capture as much value out as possible from all the data we are gathering. This is giving our engineers the possibility to start on a completely different level. All our vehicles across the globe are connected, 1.5 million vehicles generating data as we speak. And that means that we can visit every vehicle in real time if we would like to. And this gives us a huge possibility. Now when we are stepping into generative AI, we are still in very, very early phases. And for example, there was a discussion, should we allow our engineers to at all use ChatGPT, or should we ban it? And of course, we should be open to that. But for example, when someone else is generating code, and you should put it into some kind of application, you have to know what you're doing. But this is also not new, since you have an open source history. And then someone else is also generating code. So this is how we try to treat it in a practical way.
Yeah, so the things I hear there is that, you're not going for general intelligence or anything like that. You're saying, we have these processes for driving, for braking, for this, for that. And we want to use that data to make it a better interface to the person and to make it safer. And that sounds not like the AGI stuff that people were worried about.
Yeah, I mean, if I were to add to that, I think what we are seeing is exactly that point, that we actually see any large complex task or work or activity divided into large number of little components, and then you sort of build purposive models that are actually that are very good, accurate, and invariably much smaller than the AGI or the...
They're around very particular tasks. I mean, when I talk to VCs, right, the things that get them most excited are when you talk about a particular business process and trying to make that work better. They're not talking about like, oh, it's going to take it away from people at all. But you also have something else more about this, which has to do with the employees that are using these things, right? So making them more skilled, upskilling and stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think right now, if you look at most of the discussion that is happening around the AI and the use of Gen AI, is actually focused heavily on, I would say, productivity. So you keep hearing about 30%, 40%, numbers sort of keep varying. But what we really think is where this technology is likely to be most effective is actually improving the ability of people to make decisions. Because if you actually look at lots of data, I mean, if you look at something as common as software engineering, elite teams, the quality of code that they produce with respect to all the DevOps properties like, say, change latency, change-induced error rates, mean time to recover from failure, and things of that sort, the difference between an elite and an average team is a factor of 100 or more. And that's actually the same thing that you see in almost all knowledge work. If you look at best blogs to average blogs, once again, their ability to penetrate and go reach people 100x or 1000x. And so the difference between sort of, if you will, elite quality and average quality is very, very large. And that's often governed by the decisions people make, not the actions that they take. So if you look at almost all knowledge work, it's sort of a combination of decisions and actions. A lot of automation is focused on actions. What we want to actually look at, I mean, and the decisions today are actually heavily dependent on a lot of tacit knowledge that people have acquired about what to do, when to do, why to do. Now, with this technology, which has the ability to actually unearth a lot of, if you will, tacit knowledge and almost digitalize that knowledge, you can actually augment people to give them an ability to do sort of make much better decisions, and thereby actually make everybody so good to great, if you will.
So Daniela, how do you feel about all of this?
Well, I feel like we're at such an extraordinary moment in time with respect of developing the AI tools and deploying them. I see this moment in time for companies as being similar to where we were in the years 2000s, when the companies were looking to undergo the digital transformation. Now there's a lot of opportunity coming out of the AI tools, and companies need to think about the AI transformation. And the AI tools are indeed, as you said, they are really great enhancers for making decisions. I like to think about the tools we have today as kind of analogous to assistants that can go around, pour over data, bring you suggestions so that you, the human, can make a better decision. But what's interesting, you're talking about average versus expert workers and players. With AI, we can actually learn the patterns of the expert players and then help the average and the beginners improve and tend to work more like the experts than like the beginners or the average players. The way I actually think that productivity is very important, and
Yes, it
we
is.
gain a lot of productivity with AI. But the way I see it, with the new tools, we can get access to a kind of a set of superpowers, which starts with speed and productivity, and then moves into knowledge.
Yes,
and then from knowledge, we move into insight and creativity and foresight and mastery and empathy. And all of these together are empowering people to do more and better.
Absolutely, couldn't agree more.
If I may, it's so fascinating to hear about this with productivity and taking average to expert or elite. And the same goes for if you think about operators of drivers of trucks, operators of excavators, and so forth. You couldn't imagine the difference between a good and bad driver. 100 times, you said, for knowledge workers. It's at least 100 times there as well. So in order to help and optimize, these tools will be fantastic. And I am convinced that it's not in the long run the internal productivity that will be the game changer, because in the somewhat medium term, let's say the productivity gains from an engineering perspective, that will be commoditized and will be provided by suppliers of engineering tools. In the longer run, it is of course, what kind of features can I deliver to my customers based on these tools? And for us, it's a given that autonomous driving will happen big time in commercial vehicles, also on road, high speeds, and that will be impossible without utilizing AI. So what kind of features can I bring to my customers? That's where the value pool is for real.
Let me say something about this, because I have been working on autonomous driving.
I have to
for
go
years.
get a headset, but please, you guys continue
Yes,
to
it's
talk.
impossible to hear. You have a headset there, no? So let me say a few words about autonomous driving. It has been a subject in my research group for a long time, and at the moment, one of the spin-offs from my group is actually has built autonomous trucks that are improving the port operations, and they're deployed in Singapore. And these autonomous trucks are moving with greater precision than the drivers. They have to park to within 2 to 5 centimeters accuracy, and the autonomous trucks achieve that much faster than the human driver does. But and so I'm very excited about autonomy. But for now, autonomy has to be deployed in the kind of scenarios that are amenable for autonomy, where autonomy is safe. And this means spaces where the vehicles don't move very fast, there's not much congestion. So spaces like ports and factory yards and maybe empty portions of highways. Autonomy solutions are still challenging in traffic, like what we have experienced here in Davos or in Boston, or so at high speeds in environments that are difficult. But we are making slow progress in that direction. However, while we're doing that, there are practical, real applications that can be achieved today.
So as I was saying before we got on here, I was directing the effort by Nissan to develop their autonomous vehicle. And we made a choice that we wouldn't go above level 2, where the person was still in charge. So it aids the person because of liability, because it's not just a problem of autonomy. You have to get all the people on the street, all the other infrastructure up to speed for this new way of doing things. And that takes a long time.
Yeah,
And another paradigm that is kind of interesting is what we call parallel autonomy or guardian systems, where you have the person in charge, but then you also have an AI system that sees better, sees more, is in some sense more effective than the person, and issues error support, issues commands,
hints,
to
warnings,
help, exactly, to help the human, to get the human to be better. So this is in line with what we were talking about. How do we go from good and average to even better?
That's right.
So I think, we call them genius partners, essentially. So everybody you can potentially, I'm actually thinking about how to create a genius partner for a CTO.
But that's one of the main things that these techniques have, is they have the ability to give you breadth of view that's very difficult for a human, because there's all these different things you have to consider. And what they do is they produce a correlation between all of them, and they can say things like, well, there's this other case that you didn't think about, right? And so it's not removing your ability to act, but what it is doing is keeping you aware of all the things around you.
Yeah, increasing your contextual awareness, as well as making you much more aware about options, their trade-offs, and so on. Because in the world we are living in, the number of options, for example, if you just look at even the number of, say, foundational models that are available, they're sort of increasing by a dozen every day. And they have different trade-offs.
Right.
It's very hard for a person to keep up with the changing landscape. So a machine is actually much better at actually doing some of this and actually assisting somebody in making those decisions.
I think also the evidence is about the way people learn. Somebody who's lower skilled, one of the primary things that they have that's a deficit is they're less aware of when they should do what in what context. And so that's something that these models are actually really good at for the lower skilled people, to bring them up to be higher skilled.
That's right. Through a Guardian AI system, you can get instructions, you can get suggestions for when to do what.
Yeah, the interesting thing when you talk about that, because I know that you work with the Air Force, it took 25 years for the Air Force to develop real Guardian systems. So that's something where the plane takes over the flying. And what they eventually decided, if you could calculate that there was no way that the human could react fast enough and was going to die, then you put the Guardian in place, right? It's like, oh my God, that's a pretty extreme thing. But you could see that in cars. If this is like a critical life or death thing, and there's no way that the human can react fast enough, then maybe the car can do it in a way that's safer, or some of these other things.
Yeah, actually, there was an example that was quoted earlier today about firing a missile or actually preventing a missile, intercepting a missile attack.
Right.
Intercepting a missile attack is actually something that you want to do a machine to do.
Yes.
Firing a missile is not something you want a machine to do.
Machine did whoever, right? Yeah, exactly. So I'm just looking at the time here. I know we're a little bit behind, but I think we've sort of caught up here. So do you want to put one last thing on the table here, and then we'll move on to the next panel?
Yeah, I want to take the opportunity, since we have so many startups here today, to say that it's not about the tools as such. It's not about applying a new software tool. It's about finding those ones that are exploring the different applications. And I'm amazed about how many different possibilities there are out there, and to find those guys that are working on those problems that you want to get solved. That is really where we are focusing right now.
Oh, that's great.
Well, I would just say that university company partnerships are really great at tackling those problems.
There we are. Good.
And I couldn't agree with you more. I think I was going to say exactly the same thing. Start from where the value and opportunity is rather than starting from technology, because that's where the combination. So, I mean, instead of looking at hammers looking for nails, let's start from nails and look for the right tools
Good.
to solve the problem.
Good advice. Okay, well, thank you all. And not AGI, but actually things that could work and help us do a better job. So-